Our favourite Senator, Alex Antic, asked a simple question about who will be able to qualify for The Voice. This was the unsurprising response from Labor Senator Anthony Chisholm.
No, we're not talking hypotheticals.
I know what you're seeking to achieve. Quite frankly, it's borderline racist, some of your questions that you're putting here.
Is it really?
Yeah,
to ask the question about how someone identifies and how it is that the legislation, the framework does that in a practical, that's racist, is it?
Borderline, yes.
Borderline racist, is it really?
The path that you're going down.
Is it really? Yeah.
If that's where you want to head, Senator Antic.
Well, I just want an answer. What I'm looking for is a simple answer.
Yet again, you've held the spotlight, the blowtorch to Labor and to the left and to the woke. You asked them last year, what is a woman? They couldn't answer that. You asked the very simple question that without which there can be no voice. What is an Indigenous Australian? You asked that question in Parliament and you got called a racist. Tell us about it.
Well, yeah, thanks, Rowan. And look, I'm just asking simple questions because I'm a simple man ultimately, and I mean these are fundamentals, though. Really, I mean, it starts from the very top. Really, I mean, we're being told that, you know, we need to change our constitution dramatically and drastically in order to allocate people based on race. So let's put aside the issue of that diabolical idea of dividing Australians on race on its own, and let's start having a look at some of the details. Who actually qualifies? You know, what does it look like when someone says, you know, I wouldn't mind going to Parliament to represent my people, but, you know, I've got a great-grandma who was Greek and a mother who was Italian and a father who was whatever. So what does it actually look like? What's the intention, and how far back do you have to go? And I started asking questions which apparently drifted into borderline racism, which was, you know, extraordinary from a bloke who's second-generation Australian, you know, but there you go. Welcome to the world of 2023 identity politics. And I asked the question, well, if I'm 5% Aboriginal and 95% Irish, Scottish, then do I qualify? Nobody could answer that. All I got from the 60 bureaucrats in the room was assertions about there being a long-standing test, a 3-part test, which all basically comes down to people self-identifying and being accepted by their community. Now, that raises so many issues. We won't have time to talk about them all today. But take, for example, what happens if you genuinely are a person of Aboriginal descent, but your community rejects you because you share a different political view? Do you then just not become Aboriginal? And this is the problem with breaking Australians up by race. As you said in your introduction there, it's absolutely insidious. I go to Parliament because I'm an Australian. It says so on my passport. We're all Australians. People need to say, I say no to the voice. And rejecting the voice and saying no to the voice does not make you a racist.
Rita.
Well, I saw that footage that we played and other discussions during that same day have gone viral, and the activists are pushing it very heavily on social media, being outraged by your questions. But like you said, it seems like we're in this perverse situation where anti-racism is considered racist. If you want to treat everybody the same based on their character, not their ethnicity, that's now racist. And what is being understood to be racist is apparently now virtuous and what we should all be doing blindly. I mean, where are we in this country?
It's very, very confusing, Rita, confusing to normal Australia who are just fed up with this nonsense. And you're absolutely right. You know you're over the target. You know you've hit a soft spot when Twitter starts reacting in the way it's done. That is when... Yeah, that's exactly right. So, but these are questions that should be being asked by our political class, by the way. And
are we saying now that should this thing get up, and it's looking less likely by the day, but if it were to get up, that the AEC, the Australian Electoral Commission, would have to have a separate roll of voters who are identified as being Indigenous Australians, and that therefore we would have the government, the federal government, and a respected, one of the world's best administrators of elections dividing us by race.
Yeah, well, you tell me, James. Nobody seems to know any of these answers. I sat for 15 minutes almost trying to get answers like that during that Senate estimates questioning because they are very relevant questions. And I don't know the answer to that, but I presume they would have to. And so the question then becomes, who qualifies for it? What does it actually look like? You know, we've had instances time immemorial where people have identified as Aboriginal who actually aren't. That's not fair to genuine people of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander descent. This is not some sort of great big bureaucracy for the benefit of inner city woke white people, and that's what it's going to become. It's as simple as that. So there are so many questions that we don't have time to cover them all off. That is a very good one, and I'd like to know the answer.
Now, so I want to get this straight, in who can participate in the voice process, vote and also be a representative. So say I'm a woman who lives in a remote community. I'm not Indigenous by heritage, but I've married an Indigenous man. I've given birth to Indigenous children. I work in the Indigenous community. I advocate on their behalf. Am I able to put my hand up and say I want to be a representative to this voice to Parliament?
Well, that's still, as I was told on the day, we're still working on those details. We'll get back to you. Poor old Anthony. Like he got in there. I don't think he was ready for that barrage. He looks like he needs a great big hug sometimes. So I didn't want to push it anymore. But look, these are the questions that come up. And somebody raised this very issue with me the other week. They were people who are, seventh generation Australians who've been working in Indigenous communities. They don't know. They might have a tiny speck of Aboriginal in the background somewhere, maybe.
But what if I don't?
Accepted.
What if I don't? What if I've done my genealogy? I know my family tree. I don't have Indigenous heritage, but I've given birth to Indigenous children. I'm married to an Indigenous person. I work in the. Am I not qualified? Is it that race-based that nobody, no matter how intimately involved they are in the community, is able to participate if they don't have that at least, tiny percentage of Indigenous blood?
Yeah, well, in many instances, it's self-identification. So, you might well suspect somewhere in the background that you did, and you just sign a stat deck saying you did. I don't know. These
but
are
what
the
if I'm an
questions that
honest
come up.
person and I don't do that? Then I don't qualify,
Well, I know
do
you're an
I?
honest person.